position. But resilience and perseverance paid off as China optimizes measures and moves beyond the pandemic. After 3 years of battling COVID-19, learning what works and adapting to what reality demands to save lives. Take a look at the bigger picture in our special, Break Through the Siege, China's Journey of Battling COVID-19.
It's a little after 7 a.m. in the morning. Ma Bo, a courier in the city of Xi'an, had started the day's work. At least 20 fully loaded cars like this will be pushed up the ramp. In the distribution center, all packages will be disinfected. It's 10 a.m. Loaded with hundreds of packages, Ma rides out into a bustling city. Ma Bo is just one of the many busy couriers in hundreds of Chinese cities. Thanks to the adjustment and the optimization of China's COVID policy, the delivery industry, together with all other industries, have all started to recover. On January 8th, China downgraded the management of COVID-19 from Class A to Class B. COVID-19 was removed from quarantinable infectious disease management. Quarantine measures against the people infected are dropped. Authorities also stopped identifying close contacts or designating high-risk and low-risk areas. People entering China no longer need to be quarantined upon arrival. They only need to declare the results of a nucleic acid test taken within 48 hours prior to border entry. It's a milestone, a breakthrough in China's 3-year journey through COVID-19 pandemic. The Chinese people are closer than ever in getting their normal life back. Streets are getting crowded. Customers are back in stores. The nightlife is in full swing. Travel plans are eagerly made.
We wanted to come for a long time, and now it seems to be the perfect timing with coronavirus restrictions eased.
Sanya is so warm, whereas Beijing is super cold right now.
我们从河南过来的，从新闻上看到这活动可多，我们就过来了。哎，一看人可多，哎呀，我们感觉烟火气又回来了。
With the policy change, a revival has been taking place across China. Going out is easier. But for most of the past 3 years, things have been quite different. On January 22nd, 2020, COVID-19 was wreaking havoc in China's Hubei province, especially in the capital city, Wuhan. According to Hubei Provincial Health Commission, 444 confirmed COVID-19 cases were reported by that time. 399 of them were being treated at hospitals. Close to 100 of them were severe and critical cases. 17 had died. The Chinese government then ordered the shutting of exit channels from the city and the province, and for 3 months, Wuhan was placed under lockdown.
I'm the head of this expert committee group. So having discussed with them, so most of us agree with that. So we should set up a policy of not down Wuhan. I mentioned about the principle is don't go to Wuhan and don't leave Wuhan. This kind of action will make some, of course, great impact of economy. However, the leader said, the people's health and safe is the first.
We made an assessment. I think right now the outbreak has been brought under control. The transmission chain was broken, and it's great victory. So we did assessment. Contact center for Wuhan has prevented for the at least 1.5 million of cases across China, and avoided over 60,000 of mortality. So it's really a great impact to save life.
The Science magazine published a study on March 31st, 2020, conducted by more than 20 scientists from China, the US, and UK. It found that the lockdown delayed the arrival time of the virus in other cities by an estimated 2.91 days on average. This delay provided extra time to prepare for the arrival of COVID-19 in more than 130 cities across China, the study said. It also found suspending intracity public transport, closing entertainment venues, and banning public gathering were associated with the overall containment of the outbreak. Health codes and travel codes were put into use early. They were apps linked to popular mobile applications like WeChat and Alipay. They allowed each citizen to track their personal health status and contact with COVID-19 cases. Through big data computation, they made pinpointing the source of the outbreak more accurate. More immediate actions could be taken to stop it. The travel code has processed more than 89 billion requests during its service. The highest number of requests in the day was close to 400 million. As China mobilizes to combat the virus, the global community also faced the same challenge.
And we're deeply concerned both by the alarming levels of spread and severity and by the alarming levels of inaction. We have therefore made the assessment that COVID-19 can be characterized as a pandemic.
Many countries caught up late. Political infights and distrust towards science allowed the virus to spread unchecked around the globe. Lockdowns saved lives. China holds the record having the lowest death toll of COVID-19 among major countries in the world. But lockdowns aren't the ultimate solution. How to tackle the virus head-on and reduce the threat to the public was the fundamental task. After the first outbreak in 2019, China immediately shared the first completed genome sequence of the virus and started R&D on vaccines. In April 2020, a Chinese adenovirus vector vaccine started the second phase of clinical trials. It was the first COVID-19 vaccine to enter that stage in the world. The first Chinese COVID-19 vaccine, Sinopharm, was made available for the general public under conditional use on December 31, 2020, only a year after the Hubei Provincial Hospital of Integrated Chinese and Western Medicine first reported the cases. As of December 23, 2022, more than 3.46 billion vaccine jabs have been administered in China. According to China's National Health Commission, over 90% of China's total population have achieved full vaccination.
In the past 3 years, we have gained very successful results, especially in the initial stage. Once the virus comes to the world, it was very severe. It can trigger the people's cytokine storm, could cause acute lung injury, and it will make hospital, especially for the ICU beds, occupied. It happened everywhere in the world. But I think at that time in China, our Chinese government, we did the very successful measures. We control the COVID-19 cases. We did the zero COVID policy. That's the reason why we had very few people die.
The dynamic zero COVID-19 policy was an example of China's policy innovation. Over 3 years, China has been re-evaluating and adjusting its policies to meet the needs of saving lives and ensuring socioeconomic development. This is a timeline showing all 9 editions of the protocols on prevention and control of novel coronavirus pneumonia. The first 6 editions were published in rapid succession to one another. This was a time when China was learning quickly about the virus. And based on the new information, adjustments were made. The 5th edition was published on February 21st in 2020, less than a month since Wuhan was in lockdown. It listed the specifics of science-based classification of epidemic risk levels. For the first time, it was aimed at making prevention and control measures precise and suitable for different regions with different conditions. Over the next 2 years, active adjustments were made to deal with the evolving virus and the public's demand. It was fundamental to China's effort for protecting people's lives while creating opportunities for growth. They balanced the public safety and economic growth, bought the time for building upon more protections and for the virus to become less deadly. And as the Omicron variant becomes dominant, major changes were put into place. Most notably, on December the 7th, 2022, China announced 10 changes on the national level.
We have been actively optimizing and refining our COVID-19 response according to the situation. Now China has entered a new phase of COVID prevention and control, and we will take the best control measures for the Chinese people to minimize impact on people's livelihoods.
The shift of the policy is towards giving more resources for protecting especially those vulnerable population, older population, and to flatten the curve. So I think that's the most important thing. So I think that there's a shift in the policy focus.
These changes fine-tuned protocols for measures like nucleic acid testing, quarantine requirements, daily access to medication and medical services, vaccination, and risk areas classification. They paved the way for the downgrade on January 8th.
We welcome the change. We are happy to see the adjustment, which is very important, and to balance the needs to control the transmission of the virus with also the socioeconomic needs, the needs of the population, the needs to get on with society. So we're going to say to the general public, it's important to be able to move beyond very severe restrictions. We've all done it. We've all been through it, and it is a very, very difficult period.
It's a challenging transition. But resilience and perseverance paid off as China optimizes measures and moves beyond the pandemic. After 3 years of battling COVID-19, learning what works and adapting to what reality demands to save lives. Take a look at the bigger picture in our special, Break Through the Siege, China's journey of battling COVID-19.
Innovative policy doesn't mean there wasn't a cost, and previous measures exacted an economic price. Industries have been disrupted by the virus globally. For those that are dependent on people moving from one place to another, like tourism and aviation, the price was even greater. According to the World Tourism Organization, the global tourism industry's pre-pandemic contribution to the global economy was $3.5 trillion. In 2020, it fell to $1.6 trillion. It had a slight rebound in 2021, but remained at 62% below 2019. Global consulting firm McKinsey & Company reports that total revenue from airlines in 2020 was only 40% of the previous years. Major economies around the world took hits from pandemic measures.
We would see in the end of 2020, 90% of the countries having a smaller economy than at the start of the year. Our assessment is a loss of GDP in these 2 years of $12 trillion. Just to give you a picture of what it is Japan, Germany, Spain, Italy not producing for a whole year.
With the most challenging geopolitical and geoeconomic situation for decades. We have a weak recovery that easily can turn into a recession. We have not that much movement on the green transition as we have hoped, and we are not out of the woods when it comes to COVID, the pandemic.
China acted to protect its people's livelihoods as much as possible. In fact, it started doing so even in early stages of the pandemic. On February 23, 2020, the central government held a meeting to better coordinate COVID-19 measures with economic and social needs. Over the next 3 years, a series of measures were taken, ranging from tax refund, rent exemption, to strengthening the domestic market and accelerating the construction of new infrastructure like 5G networks and data centers.
Traditionally, the first month after the Chinese New Year is our best-selling period. But due to the pandemic, shopping malls were not open, transportation and logistics were halted. So we will resume production in early March. We had already missed out on this golden period. Also, the government gave us suspend taxes for 2 months, so we saved 4,800 yuan. We also enjoyed a delay in paying into Social Security and even got a partial refund of 2,600 yuan from it. If we had to pay this on schedule, we would have been short of this fund. The amount may look small, but it gives us a lot of hope and confidence in resuming work, especially at a time when we had no income.
In 2020, China's GDP grew by 2.3% and crossed the 100 trillion yuan or $14.33 trillion threshold. It was the only major economy to grow that year. In 2021, it grew by 8.4%. It was the largest growth rate in a decade and surpassed IMF expectations and the Chinese government's target. And in the same year, the digital economy became a main engine for economic growth, accounting for 39.8% of the GDP. Between 2019 and 2021, the digital economy grew by 10 trillion yuan. In the first 11 months of 2022, China's online retail sales went up 4.2% year-on-year. China's aggregate economic volume is expected to surpass 120 trillion yuan. Local governments in China arranged business representatives to travel overseas to promote trade and to secure deals.
As far as I can see, the services consumptions in major cities have already started a recovery. So there is hope that it will pick up pace in the beginning of next year. When it comes to economic growth, it's always tricky to predict when the COVID has been lasting for so long. Now, the only thing that we can see is that the policies are on the right track. We have been noticing that there were more long-term investment in the corporate sector, especially in manufacturing. Although the export has been slowing down, the domestic demand has been recovering. So the economic growth prospect in 2023 is a lot higher than this year.
The global economy is not in a favorable situation now. What China has been doing in recent years is to both increase exports and expand its domestic demand. As a big market with about 400 million middle-class population, China has a huge room for development. Now that China has relaxed epidemic prevention measures, we will start to promote exports. So an enormous driving force for economic development will be unleashed with the dual circulation policy, right? I am very optimistic about China's economic development next year.
There are still great challenges ahead. China has a population of 1.4 billion. More than 260 million are aged 60 or older. They are the most vulnerable to COVID-19 infections. As of November 28, 2022, there are still about 25 million unvaccinated elderlies.
That vaccination rate is still way too low. I think this is something actually we need to do. If we're trying to open up the society, we need to promote the vaccination of this elderly population and people who have basic medical conditions. But overall, the population has 90% fully vaccinated. I think that would give us some confidence that we should be able to reach more people in the elderly population.
And most importantly, they need to educate the general public to explain the rationale of the new measures, and also to vaccinate the elderly very quickly, and also to stockpile effective antivirals, and most importantly, to protect the hospitals from collapsing.
China stepped up the game. On December 14, 2022, China announced that it will offer a second COVID-19 booster dose to the elderly who are over 60 years old. And for those unable or unwilling to take the jab, inhalable vaccines have been rolled out. Protecting the elderly is a part of the mission. The situation is again evolving as the new policies were announced. Demand for hospital and clinic treatment has surged. Stores face the difficulties to keep up with the soaring demand for medicines, and the public is coping with higher chances of being infected.
You know, at the end of the day, you know, it's not really a do no harm scenario. It's which approach is going to cause less harm than the other. Countries around the world, and China in particular, is trying to balance this, right? What is the measured approach to preventing infection and keeping it at a level that is manageable within the healthcare system, that is acceptable within the population, with a dynamic that's changing with new variants, with new countermeasures.
The Chinese government has been taking measures to stabilize the price and the supply of medicines. Courier companies have ramped up the workforce in regions that are overwhelmed with delivery demands. On social media, people are sharing stories and experiences about riding out the infection, helping each other to be better prepared. In China's capital city, Beijing, authorities reacted to the needs by sending joint working groups of more than 50 people to 5 large pharmaceutical wholesale enterprises to alleviate the shortage of epidemic prevention drugs. Data from China's Resources Pharmaceutical Commercial Group Corporation Limited showed that the company had supplied more than 3 million items of anti-epidemic drugs to over 4,000 clients in Beijing in a week. That included 300 hospitals, more than 2,200 community health centers, and over 1,500 retail pharmacies.
We know way more than what we knew 2 years ago. I feel the antiviral treatments and the care management of the most difficult patients have been improved a lot. So hospital and medical doctors know how better, way better how to handle those patients. And I think China is really prepared to take this next step. And
I think we have to show respect. Watching the media today, I've seen criticism of China several times. And I think, you know, with the wave of illness going through China right now, I think we should show some compassion for the challenges China's facing at the moment. And at the beginning of the pandemic, I hoped globally that, you know, this would integrate us and pull us together, and, you know, nationally and globally. And I want to be optimistic. I think we've all learned a lot, but globally, it's been our greatest failure. I work globally. I was in Yemen in 2020, 21, and, you know, the vaccination rate was 3%. I mean, there's such an inequality in terms of how we've done this. I think we have to think about larger strategies. You know, this is not over, you know, and we know, and I think there's more ahead of us. I don't know which way it's going. I can't predict, but I think global cooperation is going to be very important, and data sharing and accepting people's differences.
As the night falls, Ma Bo returns to the distribution center after delivering over 600 packages. After wrapping up some work, he finished the day's duty and looks forward to tomorrow. China is optimistic about tomorrow as well. 3 years of experiencing the COVID-19 have taught China many lessons and had shown how the country's capabilities can be built upon. With that persistency and careful watch, tomorrow will be full of opportunities to build the country up from the disruption and reconnect with the world.